everybody. A good Erev Shabbos. I'm sorry I won't be with you this Shabbos. So in lieu of our Dvar Halacha, let's talk about something that we do in our shul that I believe every Ashkenazic shul does. And that is that when we return the Torah, the Chazzan usually says out loud, Yehalelu, Hashem, nishgab, lebdо. And then everyone in the congregation chimes in, Hodu, ושמיים, and then continues. Seems harmless. However, it creates a big problem. The Gemara in Masechet Megillah, Daf Kaf Bet Amud Aleph, talks about the fact that we have an ironclad rule. Kol psuke de lo paskinan Moshe, anan lo paskinan. That the psukim, the verses, as they are divided up in the Torah, were written by Moshe, and we cannot change them. In other words, when we quote a pasuk, we have to quote the entire pasuk. From this perspective, how is it that the Chazzan says, Yehalelu et Shem Hashem ki nishgab shmo lebdо, which is the beginning of a pasuk in Tehillim, and everyone chimes in, Hodu al eretz v'shamayim. The first answer, given by the Magen Avraham, name of the Kolbo, is that just read the Gemara. The Gemara talks about Moshe. Namely, it talks about the books between Bereshit to Devarim. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't write the book of Tehillim from which this passage is from, and therefore there's no problem to say it because it's from the book of Tehillim, from the Ketuvim. The second answer that's given is that anything that you do in the midst of davening as a prayer is fine. The whole Gemara was talking about laning. Namely, you're saying verses, and that is the obligation to say verses as verses, or Kriyat Shema. You have to say 3 passages as verses. But if you're saying verses as part of davening, it's not a problem. In the words of the Magen Avraham, Derech Techina Ubakasha Sharei. When you say it as a prayer or as a petition before God, and you're just invoking verses that strengthen what you say, then there's no problem. But the third answer that I'd like to focus on is the Rokeach. Comes along the Rokeach and says, in essence, this is exactly what we want to do. We want the Chazzan to instigate us to praise God. Yehalelu et Shem Hashem ki nishgab shmo lebdо. Praise God because His name and His essence is above and beyond everything else. And therefore we want the people only to say, Hodu al eretz v'shamayim, that you are praised beyond the heavens and the earth. And he brings another example where we say half a pasuk. The Chazzan says, Vekara zel ze ve'amar, and even if the congregation said it beforehand in Kedusha, they paused, and then we chime in, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Says the Rokeach, that's exactly the idea. You're trying to bring these words to life. The Chazzan says, Vekara zel ze ve'amar, and you shall say, instigate us to say, and then we say, Kadosh, 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 God is holy. And I think from this Rokeach we can learn a very important lesson about davening in general and about words in particular. If anyone thinks that the obligation to pray is to say certain words, they are mistaken. Davening has been called and will continue to be called Avodah Shebalev. Yes, we have a siddur today, yet it's regulated to certain times, but no, it did not lose its status as Avodah Shebalev, the work of the heart. That being said, we have to make it alive. And the only way to make it alive is when you read the words, you act them out. So indeed, when you read the words, Yehalelu et Shem Hashem ki nishgab shmo lebdо, you want all the people to chime in, Hodu. Not everyone say the whole full pasuk, because then you'd say the words, but you'd lose the impact. And the same thing is true throughout davening. Davening has to be an experience of the heart. The words are a means to get there. And any time we can make it come alive, be it through an appropriate nigun, be it through doing exactly what we just said now, then indeed, says the Rokeach, it's 100% allowed. So as we get into Shabbos, I believe that any Baal Tefillah, anyone leading services, has to ask themselves 2 questions. What do the words mean, and how do I make them alive for the congregation around me? Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shine make up the shayshvi kilo misbei sandi mitivecho we make up the shine make up the shayshvi kilo misbei